Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Straight Up Christian Podcast. I'm your host, Blair, and I'm so excited to be here with you all today. Today, we have a little Q&A type episode, and I'm so excited because these are questions or suggestions that you all asked for me to talk about or me to answer. Around the time that I announced that I was going to be doing a podcast, I posted on my Instagram asking what are some topics that you all wanted me to speak on, and you sent those in, and I'm so excited to be able to answer some questions and just speak on some of the things that you asked for. So yeah, let's jump right in. Okay, so before we jump right into the questions and the answers or the statements that I got, I want to preface this by saying I am not going to be able to say everything that I want to about all of these subjects in this video because I'm talking about multiple things and I'm trying to give you as much advice and love as I can in the tiniest bit of time. And I did plan on talking about a lot of these things in separate episodes. I hope that makes sense. So stay tuned in the future because a lot of these topics that I talk about are going to be topics in future episodes. So do not be sad if I don't answer every single one of your questions about a certain subject in this episode because there will be more. Also, as you see, I'm back to just being me today, which is so fun, but also very stressful because I have to talk a lot and I don't have someone here to add their wisdom. But it's a lot of fun. Also, I'm filming this on Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day or late Valentine's Day, which is very fitting for some of the things I'm going to talk about. There's a little hint. But I'm wearing pink, and here's some flowers that my boyfriend got me. How sweet. But let's jump right in to question number 1. So I got a lot of questions about relationships and singleness. Now, Christians are crazy about relationships and singleness. I feel like it is something we talk about so much, but I definitely understand because when I was single, I was like, gosh, it is so hard to be single. And now that I'm in a relationship, I'm like, gosh, there's so many responsibilities that come with being in a relationship. So I definitely understand all of the questions, and I'm so excited that y'all asked me about these two subjects. But first, I want to preface this by saying I am not a love expert. I am 19 years old. I am not married. I do not have years of marriage under my belt to be able to pour out all of this wisdom on you. I have been dating my boyfriend for 11 months. Not even a year. Okay? Not even a year. 11 months. Now, I have had my fair share of singleness, so I feel like I do have a little bit to add to that subject. But when it comes to relationships, I'm just going to share with you what I've experienced and some things that I think will help you in your personal walk. So just remember that Blair is not a love expert when she's talking about these things, but I'm going to do the best that I can. So now I'm going to read to you some of the questions that I was asked or some of the statements that y'all suggested that I talk about. Number 1, how to glorify God in your relationship. Number 2, season of singleness. Number 3, staying content in a season of singleness. And the last one was what the Bible says about choosing relationships. Now, in this question section, I separated it into 2 different categories. So I'm going to touch on relationships and I'm also going to touch on singleness. So I'm going to start off talking about relationships. And I have 2 main things I want to say regarding this subject. Again, not an expert, just giving you what has helped me. I do plan on, now he has to be accountable for this now that I'm saying it on this video. Anyways, I do plan on doing an episode with my boyfriend to kind of give some advice as to what has helped us in our relationship and just to have him on here and ask him some fun little questions and pick at his brain. But anyways, back to the topic, relationships. So my first point under this is you are not married. If you are asking me, a 19-year-old, about relationships, I highly doubt that you're married. But if you are married and listening to this, maybe what I say can help you too. I'm not really sure. Anyways, but in this context, I'm talking about a relationship with someone that you are not married to but are dating, to clarify. So I know that if you're listening to this and you are under that umbrella of we are dating but we're not married, you know that you're not married. So you might be wondering, Blair, why are you telling me that I'm not married? I literally know that I'm not married. That's why I'm asking you for advice. But I just have to remind you that you are not married. Because I think that we get it confused, not even about sex. I'm not even saying you're not married to even talk about sex. That's not even what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the fact that you do not have to include your significant other in every single aspect of your life. You are not married to them. You do not technically owe them all of these extra things. Now, yes, it is great to love your significant other so much, to want to share everything with them and do all these fun things with them, but you're not required to do any of that. And it's so important to remind yourself that you're not married. You don't have to share everything with them, and you are allowed to still have that kind of intimacy with yourself rather than having to have intimacy with someone else. Not saying that when you're married you can't have that one time with yourself, but I really wanted to focus in on that. And what I'm saying there is they are not your number one priority. When you get married, you're committing to someone forever, and it is a beautiful thing. I mean, Jesus literally uses it as a picture of like us when Jesus is called the bridegroom, and when he comes back, we're his bride, he's coming to get us. Like, marriage is a beautiful picture, and we see it all throughout the Bible, but we do not need to get so focused on it that we lose the real picture of our own relationship with Jesus. But also, as I was saying, we're not married, so that means that our significant other is not our number one priority. Now, even when you're married, they still shouldn't be your number one priority. God should be up there, and that's really the point that I'm trying to make, is God needs to be your number one in your relationship. You want to know how to have a healthy, God-centered relationship? Prioritize your alone time with the Lord. And I'm just going to give you an example in my own personal life with Gavin. When we first started dating, we're like, oh, we just need to read the Bible together. All the time we need to read the Bible together. Da, 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 da. We would read the Bible together, but we wouldn't read it on our own. And we thought that that was okay. And when I started to see areas of my life that I was struggling in again, that I hadn't struggled in a long time, I was wondering, and the Lord really was like, you're spending time with me, with your boyfriend that you're not married to, and you're not even spending time with me by yourself. And so that is a big, big thing, is you have to remember that God is your first love. He comes first before all. In Matthew 22:37, it says, Jesus replied, love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like this, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these commandments. And this is so important to remember when we're walking out our relationship with our boyfriend or girlfriend, is yes, they're important in our life. Yes, they deserve a certain level of priority, but this is the level it should be. God, family, boyfriend. God, family, girlfriend. Whatever that looks like. You're not married. When you get married, it becomes God, husband, family. God, wife, family. But right now, you're not. So you just need to remind yourself that they aren't your number one priority. God is. Now on to my second point about relationships. This is going to be a long episode. Anyways, my second point is boundaries. If there is something in your relationship that is keeping you from God, you need to create a boundary in your life. So what does that look like? If kissing makes you uncomfortable, don't kiss. If something convicts you, don't do it. And it's hard. It's hard to set up these boundaries, but a boundary shouldn't be, here's the boundary, and this is as close as I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get as close as I can. No. A boundary should be, here's the boundary. I'm staying as far away from it as I can so that I can glorify God in this relationship. And my second thing underneath boundaries would be honest with your significant other about what tempts you, what convicts you. They want to know if you're dating someone that is really trying to glorify God with their life. They want to know what bothers you. They want to know how they can better love you by setting these boundaries with you and holding you accountable to things that you are convicted about. So be honest with your boyfriend or girlfriend and tell them things that you aren't comfortable with. Tell them things that convict you. And also set your boundaries on biblical truths. If you're wondering if something should be a boundary or not, go try to find it in the Bible. Go ask a spiritual mentor. Go ask someone at church. I guarantee you will find an answer. And most importantly, pray about it. God will give you an answer about those things. So when you're setting these boundaries, be sure to talk to the person you're in a relationship with, and also be sure to base them off of biblical truth so you can make sure that you're doing it in a healthy way. Okay, so next we're going to get into the singleness part of this question, which is so fun because I'm not single anymore, so I get to talk about it with you all. Anyways, single. First thing I want to say is if you are not married, you're single. You might be dating someone and be like, oh, but I'm dating, so I'm really not single. Yeah, you're single. When it comes, technically in the Bible speaking, I guess, single. And I'm not saying that like in a sense of go and run off and do all this other stuff, but like, again, you're single. The Bible doesn't talk about dating, but it does talk about singleness and marriage. And one thing that I wanted to point out for you all who are single and you're over there like, oh my gosh, I really just wish that I had a boyfriend. Or I really just wish that I had a girlfriend. I just hate being single. Like, all these cute people around me on Valentine's Day, they get all this cute stuff. And I'm allowed to make fun of that because that was me at one point. So I'm not making fun of you to be mean. I'm making fun of myself because that was literally me. I did not see how great singleness was. I don't know if you've ever heard a married person talk. I feel like every time I asked a married person about singleness when I was single, they were like, oh, being single was so great. Like, I love my husband/wife, but you really need to soak up that season because it was so great. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, yeah, right, whatever. But no, seriously, like, being single is great because your mindset is literally just on God. And you are focusing on God. You don't have any other responsibility. Now, again, I'm not saying this as if I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with my boyfriend. I love my boyfriend and he was sent from the Lord. Amen. I'm not saying that I want to be single. I'm just saying that if you are single, I am able to look back now and see how much of a blessing singleness really is. Paul says when he's writing to the church in Corinth in 1 Corinthians 7, he says, now to the unmarried and the widows, I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried as I do. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. So even Paul was single and he did so much great work. If you're a Christian, you probably already know this, but I'm going to remind you because one of the rules in my life is just because I already know something doesn't mean that I don't need to hear it again. So maybe you already know that Paul was single and he wrote so much of the New Testament and he did so many great things, and you might already know that. But guess what? I'm here to remind you of that. Your singleness is not this awful thing. It is a blessing from God. Use this season to get to know yourself better, to get to know God better, to just follow God more easily because you don't have the responsibility of being with someone else. You have the responsibility of following God, and that really is a blessing. And when you're single, you just get to have the time to be able to spend time with yourself, I guess, and really spend time with God and spend time with your family. When you're in a relationship, you're, in a sense, tied to your significant other. You are having to tell them, oh, I'm doing this, or having to say, oh, no to your friends because you've already planned to go do this with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're having to say, like, oh, well, I have to make sure that I'm spending time with my boyfriend. I have to make sure that I'm spending time with my friends, my family, and my church, and my school. And when you're single, you have the ability to not have that boyfriend or girlfriend aspect. All you're really tied to is your parents and God. And that is such a blessing. I just really want to harp right there and focus right there and remind you that your singleness is not a curse. It is a blessing from God. It is a season where you just get to be all in for Him and just soak that up. And the next thing that I wanted to say, ladies, 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 please listen to this. Like, if you're in your car driving right now, turn the volume to max and listen to this and engrave this. Boys, listen to this and engrave this in your brain too. Do not go searching. This is something that I struggled with so much. I really forced relationships into my life, and because I forced them, they were not fruitful at all. They brought me down, and this is no hate to any of my ex-boyfriends. I'm not getting on here to bash them. This is a personal thing for me. This is all me, not them, me. When you go out and you are searching for a relationship that is not in God's will for your life, it's going to bring you down. And it's going to bring the other person down too. So do not go searching for a significant other. Now, if you're interested in someone, be interested in them. That's fine. I'm not saying that you have to go put yourself in a corner and hide away from the rest of the earth. I'm just saying, don't focus so much on trying to find someone. Instead, focus on praying for someone. I put in here, pray for your future spouse. Pray for their protection and wisdom, for their growth, and that they would have clarity when they meet you. That when they meet you, that they would pray about you, and that you would pray about them, and you would say, God, is this the person that you want me to date? Maybe give this a try. And if you do get clarity on that, and you do get the yes from God, go right into it. But do not search in your singleness. It is just not what you need to do. It's okay to go on dates and do things, but just don't force anything. Just let it flow. Like me and Gavin, we were friends for 2 years before we started dating. Did we have little crushes on each other every now and then? Yes. But we didn't jump right in. We gotta let it flow. I actually even told him that I didn't like him. I said, no, I don't want to be your girlfriend. Sorry. And now look at me. I'm very happy. And that's because I just let it be. And I was very content in my singleness before we started dating. So I really do think once you become content in your singleness, that is when God will send you someone. Anyways, let's get on to the next question because I feel like I've already been talking for so long. All right, so moving right along to the next question. This question was about friendships. I got 2 questions about this, and they were distancing worldly friendships and how to end friendships in a loving way. Now, again, I am not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but I do feel that I have a lot to offer in this sphere because I have had my fair share of friendship breakups or arguments or having to deal with someone who maybe you need to distance yourself from in a loving way. But again, while I'm talking about this, I'm just going to focus on the questions that were asked because there is so much that I have to say about friendships. And actually, I have been planning an episode about this for a while now. So stay tuned because that is probably coming your way very soon. But anyways, the first thing that I would ask you if you're asking these questions is, why do you think that you want to distance yourself? Is it because someone hurt you? Is it because someone is distancing you from Jesus, or is it because you just think you're better than them? And really, I want you to digest that last question and really ask yourself that of, do I just not want to be friends with this person because I think that I'm better? And I feel like a lot of the times Christians have this problem of, oh, well, I can't be their friend because they partake in things that I don't partake in. Well, Jesus walked with sinners. They partaked in things that he did not partake in. But we'll get to that in a minute. I digress. Anyways, but if they are pulling you away from Jesus, I wanted to share a few verses with you that would encourage you to remember that you are allowed to pull yourself away from certain relationships. You are not committed to a friendship. And I really want you to realize that if someone is influencing your life in a negative way, there is a way to lovingly step away from that relationship. But to the Bible, because that's what we're all here for, okay? Again, Paul writing to the church of Corinth, 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14, do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Now, if you don't know what a yoke is or what yoke means, I just looked it up so that I could make sure I give the most concise definition for you. Get the most concise definition for you because, y'all, sometimes I try to write out definitions and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So I really like this definition, but it says, they have no choice but to move in lockstep with one another. So a yoke was a wooden device, I guess you could say, mechanism, machine, not really machine, that they would put around the neck of like oxen, two of them, to plow like land. And if one of the oxens weren't as tall as or as short as the other, then they were unequally yoked, and all of the work went on one of them. Since they weren't working together, they got the job done slower. So that's what Paul is referring to in this verse. He's saying that if you are with someone, if you are in lockstep with someone, you are yoked together with them, you are doing life with them, they are influencing you. You have no choice but to be in lockstep with them, and that even means if they are holding you back, you have no choice. So remove yourself from that relationship if you notice that they are keeping you from God. Another verse or set of verses that I have here is in Psalm chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. Says, blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but those who delight in the law of the Lord and who meditate on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaves do not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Y'all, again, if someone is holding you back from your relationship with the Lord, if someone is holding you back from growing, it is okay to lovingly step away from that relationship. You do not need to be walking alongside people who do not have your benefit at heart. And that is I'm not saying that to sound selfish or mean. I'm saying who you allow to influence you matters, and you need to protect yourself. Now, another thing, getting off of my soapbox when it comes to guarding your heart and keeping yourself from people who are influencing you, is who is going to reach that person who is far from God if you don't? And this is something that I had to learn early on in my own walk with Christ, who is going to reach the person that I think I don't need to be around if it's not me? So when I say this, I'm saying this out of a place of, yes, we are holy, which means we're set apart. But so is Jesus, and he was so much holier than us, and he still walked with sinners. Jesus healed on the Sabbath in Mark 3. Jesus saw and heard Zacharias when others hated him in Luke 19. So there is a way that you can still be in a relationship or a friendship with someone and not allow them to influence your life, but they can allow you to influence theirs. And what I mean when I say that is you just have to learn how to have self-control. And if you get around someone and you notice you just can't have self-control, distance yourself for a while. But don't forget about that person. Continue to pray for that person. But if you get around someone and you just don't like the way they act, but it's not affecting you, remember that they still need Jesus. That doesn't mean don't protect yourself or let people walk all over you. That just means that you are the hands and feet of Jesus, and you have to remember there is a way to lovingly distance yourself but still be there for someone when they need you. And I hope that this is all making sense. Remember, I want you to ask yourself the question, why do I want to distance myself? Really answer that, really wrestle with it in your mind, and really try to digest that the best that you can. All right, now to our very last question. I'm really excited. This one wasn't much of a question. It was more of a statement that was sent in, but it's on forgiveness. But before we get into that, I just want to say I'm sorry that this isn't like a fun, bubbly episode. I literally know the last episode that I put out, we had Stacy on. We were having a good old time, laughing it up. And now I'm just over here being a stick in the mud. I'm kidding. I'm not really being a stick in the mud. I'm just trying to answer your questions to the best of my ability. Okay? I do my best here. Anyways, I actually just wrote a sermon on this for one of my classes. And so I'm having to take that and like shrink it, really compress it into a little box of like 5 minutes. Into this little box of 5 minutes. So I'm gonna say as much as I can, not as much maybe as I want to. But my first thing when it comes to forgiveness is that we know as Christians that we're supposed to forgive. And this can be a hard truth to digest sometimes, because if you're anything like me, this is your mindset. Oh, they done me wrong once, I ain't letting them back in again. I don't care. That's my mindset, at least. But God knows that I don't need to do that. Anyways, in Ephesians 4, 31 through 32, it says, get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving one another just as Christ has forgave you. So why do we forgive? Because Jesus forgave us. And let me tell you right now, I'm the first person to say, I don't want to forgive that person. They did me so dirty. That was so rude. And Jesus is the first one to always say, but I forgave you. And you be so rude sometimes too, girl. Jesus does talk to me like that, okay? Sometimes, because that's what I need to hear. You don't have to believe me. But sometimes, let me just say this. I know I'm really getting off topic here, but Jesus does talk, like, he puts me in my place. And I love him for that, because he really will hit me with the, girl, you are so rude sometimes, and you're over here saying that this person is rude, but you can be just as rude. So how about you get up and forgive them and move on with your day instead of dwelling on this little thing that happened over here, because you know you do the same thing sometimes. But anyways, back to what I was saying. He really does put me in my place. I'm sorry. That's really funny to me. we forgive because Jesus forgave us, and it's just that simple. I'm sorry. It's just it is as simple and clear cut as that. But we all know that forgiveness is hard and it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of prayer. I had to forgive some people for some very hard things before, and it took a lot of prayer. It took a lot of asking Jesus, God, please do a work in my heart. God, please move in my heart in a mighty way, because I just cannot forgive them. So I definitely understand if someone has hurt you so much and it feels like you just can't, but work at it, pray about it. And people may be so undeserving of our forgiveness, but again, we are so undeserving of Jesus's forgiveness. And while it takes a lot of work for us to forgive, it doesn't take Jesus any work. He got up on that cross for us. He did it. And he forgives us like this. And all that we have to do is pray. Just pray that the Lord would help you forgive that person, that the Lord would help you see that person in a new way, that they would remind you of your salvation and all that Jesus did for you, so that you could remember that you were lost once and that you need forgiveness just as much as that other person. Now, there is a fine line, just like I was talking about in friendships. There's a fine line between forgiveness and letting people walk all over you. Forgiveness really is an act of humility. It takes a lot of pushing your pride down and saying, no, I want to be prideful in this moment, but I am instead going to forgive that person. So it takes a lot of that. But that doesn't mean that because you forgive someone, you let them walk all over you. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But I'm also not trying to say that we hold something against someone forever. Because as a woman, it is very easy to let one little backhanded comment, one little mean, rude gesture affect me or my view of someone for way longer than it ever should, if you know what I mean. So you have to see that there's a fine line in that forgiveness area of letting someone walk all over you and holding things against them forever. You need to find that in between. You need to find I forgive that person. What they did to me was wrong, but I still forgive them and I have to move on with my life. And unforgiveness really is just such a burden that we aren't supposed to carry, and that we really just need to lay at the feet of Jesus at the end of the day. So being able to say like, oh, I see what they did was wrong. It really hurt me, but I have to let it go because it's too much for me to carry. And I do have a verse I want to share with you all about that. It's Matthew 11:28-29. It says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give rest. Take my yoke," there that word is again, "yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy. OMG. Anyways, my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And that's Jesus saying that. And that really is such a beautiful picture of who he is, because what we give to him is so heavy. Our unforgiveness is so heavy. Our hurt and all the things we go through, it's just so heavy. And what we get in exchange is peace and joy and kindness and compassion for other people. And it's just such an unequal swap. Jesus gets all the hard stuff and we get the peace of God. But it's also such a beautiful thing and such a loving thing to see that our Savior wants to take on our burdens willingly, because he knows that we can handle them and that he can handle them, but we can't. And I just wanted to remind you, if you're really struggling with unforgiveness, lay it at the feet of Jesus. He knows that it's heavy. He knows that it's a lot, and he wants to be able to help you forgive that person and move on with your life. All right, y'all. That was the last question. I'm so excited that I got to answer some of your questions and talk about some of the topics that you wanted me to. I hope that this gave you a lot of clarity. I'm praying that this really just touched your heart in a great way. But be sure to stay tuned because our next episode will be on March 4th and it will go live at 12 a.m. So stay tuned for that and make sure that you are following our Instagram so that you are able to submit your questions or some things that you would like us to talk about, or maybe even answer some polls and just be able to catch up on all things Straight Up Christian Podcast. But make sure you're watching out for our next episode because straight up, you're not going to want to miss it. I love you all and I pray that you have a great rest of your week.